Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're focusing on the geography of India. Going beyond just looking at maps and borders.
That's right. We're going to explore how India's size and location have shaped, well, everything really, the past, the present, and even get a glimpse of what the future might hold.
Exactly. It's going to be a fascinating journey. So let's start with the basics. India covers a massive 3.28 million square kilometers.
It really is huge.
It makes it the seventh largest country in the world.
Yeah. But how does that actually compare to, say, the United States? I mean, we always hear about how big the U.S. is.
Well, the U.S. is actually pretty close in size. It comes in at number 4. It takes up 9.83% of the world's landmass. But if you really want to grasp the scale, you got to think about Russia.
Ah, right.
It's the largest country, right? It takes up almost 18%. So compared to that, 3.28% might not sound like much.
Yeah, you're right.
But trust me, India is enormous.
That definitely helps put things into perspective, and I'm guessing all that's big means a pretty diverse range of landscapes. Oh, absolutely. You name it, India's got it. Towering Himalayan peaks in the north, lush tropical rainforest down south, vast deserts out west, and fertile plains in the east.
It's like a whole continent within a continent.
Exactly.
So it's not just about size, but the incredible variety packed into that size.
That's right.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk location. We all know India's in Asia, of course, but how does its position on the globe actually impact its story?
Well, think of it this way. India's right at the head of the Indian Ocean, which makes it a crucial link between East and West Asia.
Ah, I see.
And for centuries, this has made it a major hub for maritime trade, but also a meeting point for all sorts of different cultures and ideas.
It's like India's geography set it up to be a global player right from the start.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, speaking of global connections, what about that famous line, the Tropic of Cancer? It runs right through India, right?
You got it. The Tropic of Cancer divides India almost in half, and that's what creates this fascinating mix of climates.
So tropical in some parts and more temperate in others.
Exactly. In the south, you have tropical regions where things like coconuts and mangoes thrive,
Yeah.
but then you go up north and you find apple orchards and wheat fields. It's pretty amazing.
So even within India, there's incredible diversity. What about its neighbors? I know India shares borders with quite a few countries.
It does. Well, just to name a few, there's Bangladesh to the east, China up north, Pakistan to the west, and Nepal nestled in the Himalayas. Oh, and let's not forget Sri Lanka, just across the water to the south.
Wow, that's a lot of neighbors. And I imagine each one has had an impact on India's history and culture over the centuries.
Definitely.
Now, with so much land stretching east to west, is there a big time difference between the two ends of the country?
Oh, there is. There's actually a 2-hour time difference between the easternmost and westernmost points of India.
2 hours. Wow. So while the sun's setting in one part of the country, it's still pretty bright in another?
Exactly.
Do they have different time zones to account for that?
They don't. India operates on a single time zone.
Really?
Yeah. It's based on the 82.5 degrees east meridian, which runs through a city called Mirzapur in Uttar Pradesh. It's quite unique, actually.
Wow. So the sun rises 2 hours earlier on one side of the country, but everyone's running on the same clock. It really highlights just how vast India is.
Definitely does.
And speaking of vastness, when we say India, we're not just talking about the mainland, are we?
That's right. India also includes the Lakshadweep Islands out in the Arabian Sea and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal.
Right. I always forget about those.
They add even more diversity to India's landscape and culture, that's for sure.
So we have soaring mountains, tropical beaches, bustling cities, and remote islands, all part of the Indian Union. It truly is a land of contrasts.
It is.
But with all that coastline, I'm guessing India's history is deeply connected to the sea.
Absolutely. India has a long and rich maritime history. It has an impressive coastline stretching for 7,516.6 kilometers. It borders the Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean, and the Arabian Sea. And this has made it a natural gateway, not just for trade, but also for cultural exchange, and unfortunately even invasions throughout history.
So those spices that traveled westward along the spice route, or those influences from the Greeks in West Asia,
All arrived via that vast coastline.
it's like a physical reminder of how geography shapes history.
Exactly.
But what about those land routes? I can picture caravans crossing deserts, winding through those treacherous mountain passes, bringing new ideas and traditions right into India.
You're painting a very vivid picture. It's accurate. For centuries, Those land routes were the lifeblood of cultural exchange.
Wow.
It's amazing to think about the stories, the knowledge, even the innovations that traveled along those paths.
It's like those mountain passes and desert trails were the original information
I
superhighways.
like that.
And I bet India wasn't just receiving these influences, it was also sharing its own unique culture with the world.
Absolutely. India has always been a generous exporter of ideas and traditions, from ancient stories and philosophical concepts to mathematical innovations like the decimal system. India's contributions have had a huge impact on global civilization.
That's incredible. It really is mind-blowing to think about how interconnected India has been with the rest of the world for centuries, all because of its unique size and location. It definitely makes me rethink how I look at maps and borders.
It's more than just lines and colors, right?
It's about the stories they tell and the connections they reveal. But let's dig a little deeper into those connections. I'm eager to learn more about those ancient trade routes and how they shaped the India we know today.
I'd love to. Let's take a journey back in time and explore those fascinating pathways of cultural exchange.
I'm ready to time travel.
Okay. Well, first, I think we should take a little break and let all this information sink in.
Sounds good. We've covered a lot.
We'll be back in a flash to continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of India's geography.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive deeper into those ancient trade routes that crisscrossed India. It's fascinating to imagine those caravans, laden with silks and spices, making their way through those treacherous mountain passes and vast deserts.
It really does capture the imagination. And they weren't just trade routes. Think of them more like cultural arteries, carrying not just goods, but ideas and beliefs and stories across the land.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. So what were some of the key routes that connected India to the rest of the world?
Well, one of the most famous was the Silk Road. And despite its name, it wasn't actually a single road. It was more like a network of routes.
Right.
And it stretched all the way from China to the Mediterranean Sea. India played a crucial role in this network, with cities like Taxila and Pataliputra becoming major trading hubs.
I can only imagine the hustle and bustle of those ancient cities. And I bet it wasn't just silk that was traded along these routes, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. It was everything. I mean, spices, precious stones, textiles, pottery, even animals were exchanged along the Silk Road. You can picture caravans laden with peppercorns from Kerala, or sapphires from Kashmir, or cotton fabrics from Gujarat, all heading to markets in far-off lands.
It's incredible to think about the sheer volume and variety of goods that were moving across those routes. But it wasn't just about material goods, was it?
You're right. These routes were also conduits for knowledge and ideas. Take the spread of Buddhism, for example. It traveled from India to China and Southeast Asia along these very paths, carried by monks, pilgrims, and traders.
So these routes were like ancient versions of the internet, connecting people and cultures in ways that had never been possible before.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And just like the internet today, these ancient routes had a huge impact, shaping societies and influencing the course of history.
It makes you wonder what those early travelers must have thought and experienced as they journeyed along these routes. I mean, what kind of cultural influences flowed into India along these paths?
Well, one example that comes to mind is the influence of Greek art and architecture. Following Alexander the Great's campaigns in the 4th century BCE, you can still see traces of that influence in the Gandhara school of art, which blended Greek and Indian styles.
Wow, that's fascinating. A real blend of East and West. And what about influences from the West, beyond the Greeks?
Well, India also had significant interactions with Persia and Central Asia. The arrival of Islam in the 7th century CE brought new architectural styles like the dome and the minaret, which over time became integrated into Indian architecture.
So these routes were a two-way street, with India both giving and receiving cultural influences. And that exchange continues to shape India's diverse cultural landscape even today. What about the stories and philosophies that travel along these routes? I'm thinking of those ancient tales from the Panchatantra, making their way across borders and captivating audiences in distant lands.
You're right. The Panchatantra, with its animal fables and moral lessons, became one of the most widely translated works of Indian literature. Its stories spread far and wide, as far as Europe and the Middle East, inspiring countless adaptations and retellings.
I love those stories. They're so timeless and universal. What about philosophical ideas? Did those travel as well?
Oh, absolutely. The profound concepts of the Upanishads, which explore the nature of reality and the self, also found their way along these routes. And they influenced philosophical thought in other cultures as well.
So we're talking about the spread of wisdom and spirituality on a global scale. It's amazing to think about the impact these ideas have had on human thought and belief systems across the world.
It really is.
It makes you realize that even though these routes may have faded into history, their legacy lives on in the interconnected world we live in today.
I agree. The exchange of ideas and cultures that began along these ancient paths continues to shape our world in countless ways. And even though physical geography might not play the same dominant role in connecting people, the legacy of those connections is still there.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all part of a much larger story, a story that goes beyond borders and time. Speaking of time, I think we need to shift our focus to the present. I mean, how is India's geography shaping its role in the world today?
That's a great idea. After all, understanding the past is key to navigating the present and shaping the future, right?
Right.
And India, with its unique geographical advantages, is definitely in a position to play an even more significant role on the global stage.
So let's fast forward to the 21st century. What are some of the ways in which India's geography is impacting its present and future?
Well, for starters, its location, right at the heart of the Indian Ocean. That makes India a key player in global trade and maritime security.
Right. We talked about its vast coastline and how it's always been a gateway for trade. But how does that play out in today's world?
Well, with the rise of globalization, India's ports have become even more crucial. They're major hubs for shipping and logistics. And as a major maritime power, India plays a vital role in ensuring the safety and security of these crucial sea lanes.
So, geography is still shaping India's economic and strategic interests, even today. What about its relationships with its neighbors? We talked about all those land borders earlier. How do they factor into India's present-day reality?
It's a complex question,
Yeah.
and one that requires, well, careful consideration. I mean, India's relationships with its neighbors are multifaceted, shaped by history, culture, and of course, geography. Some relationships are all about cooperation and collaboration, while others are, unfortunately, marked by tension and conflict.
Sounds like navigating those relationships is a delicate balancing act.
It is, but it's also an opportunity. You see, India can leverage its geographical position to foster regional stability and economic growth.
So, India's geography presents both challenges and opportunities in its interactions with its neighbors. What about its role in the wider world? I mean, how is its location impacting its global standing?
Well, India's size, its population, and its growing economy, all of that makes it a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. And its strategic location, bridging east and west, gives it a unique perspective, a unique influence in international affairs.
So, it's not just about physical location, it's about how India chooses to leverage its position to shape the global landscape.
Exactly. And as we move further into the 21st century, India's role in shaping that world order is only going to become more significant.
This is fascinating stuff, but I'm sensing a but coming.
You're right. While India has immense potential, there are also some serious challenges that need to be addressed. Climate change, for example, poses a real threat to India's diverse ecosystems and its vast population.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought. So even in the 21st century, geography continues to shape India's destiny, both for better and for worse.
It does. And understanding the complexities of India's geographical realities is essential for anyone who wants to understand its past, present, and future. But I think it's time for a quick break. We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating world of India's geography.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive into India's geography, from its impressive size and all those diverse landscapes to its strategic location and that long history of global connections. It's amazing to see how all these factors have shaped India's journey over time.
It really is a testament to the enduring power of geography, isn't it? It goes so much deeper than just maps and borders. It's about how those physical realities influence everything.
Yeah.
The flow of ideas, the movement of people, the shaping of entire cultures.
Exactly. We started by exploring India's sheer vastness. I mean, that incredible 3.28 million square kilometers that makes it the seventh largest country on the planet. And within that expanse, we found such a stunning array of landscapes, everything from the towering Himalayas to those tropical beaches, even arid deserts and fertile plains.
Yeah, and it's that diversity that makes India so unique. Not just the physical geography, but also the cultural influences. It's a place where ancient traditions can coexist with modern aspirations. You have bustling cities right beside tranquil villages, and a multitude of languages and religions. It's like a vibrant tapestry of human experience.
We also talked about India's strategic location. It's at the head of the Indian Ocean, a crossroads between East and West Asia, and that's what's made it a hub for trade and cultural exchange for centuries. Remember those ancient land routes we discussed, like the Silk Road? They carried not just goods, but ideas and beliefs, connecting India to the wider world.
And those connections have definitely left their mark on India's cultural landscape. We saw how influences from Greece, Persia, Central Asia, they all enriched India's art, architecture, literature, even its philosophical thought.
It's like all these layers of history coming together to create the India we know today. And speaking of today, we talked about how India's geography is still shaping its role in the 21st century. That vast coastline and its strategic location make it a key player in global trade and maritime security.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And its size, population, growing economy, all of that gives it increasing influence on the global stage. But of course, India's facing challenges too, like the impacts of climate change and the complexities of those relationships with its neighbors.
It's true, but it's also a country brimming with potential, ready to play an even bigger role in shaping the future of our interconnected world.
Couldn't agree more. It's been such a journey exploring all these different facets of India's geography, and I hope our listeners have gained a new appreciation for the profound ways in which geography shapes, well, everything. It's more than just maps. It's lives, cultures, the course of history itself.
I completely agree. So next time you look at a map of India, remember it's not just lines and colors. It's about the stories those lines tell, the connections they reveal, and the enduring power of place in shaping the human experience.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep discovering the fascinating world all around us.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the geography of India. Until next time.